Oh, folks, we're here today with one area director, Area 4 Director Alex Acosta. Say hi, Alex.
How's it going, y'all?
Yes, and a former area director now, formerly from Area 2, Mr. John Burt,
Howdy.
which just happened today. So, John, could you explain what happened today? It's like I'm getting
They
caught up too. So it's like, what the hell happened today with USPSA?
they held a special meeting and by a vote of 6-1 took my membership and booted me as a director.
Okay, so I think a lot of people might be asking, like, what do you mean? Like, what's going on? So could you give like wait, it's March now. So you're on the board 2.5 months. There was an election last year. Could you just give people like a rundown of like what happened over the last few months and then
Sure.
just to make it make sense, like make it make sense why your membership was revoked?
Yeah, it goes back to last year before I joined the board with some statutory record requests and how they were handled and my concerns about how they were handled. Once I joined the board, my rights to records changed, and so I began pursuing it that way. January was pretty busy with the board retreat and the bylaws and all the other things. So I wasn't really focused on it then. But then at the retreat, I learned that the vast majority of our records were sitting in a folder that only Alan could access. And he was allegedly going through that slowly. And someday we might have access. So I put a motion on the February calendar to hire a paralegal to expedite that process so that directors could get access to the corporate records. In response, Alan said, "Oh, we don't need to do that. Rick and we're going to make all the files and folders available to all directors now." They did make folders available, and so I took the motion off calendar. And then we pointed out to Alan that while you made folders available, we can't see any of the files. I asked our attorney for a legal opinion on how they were supposed to handle it. Then Alan created a policy regarding directors' access to those records, which was a little bit bizarre. But I said, okay, I'll play along. And I submitted a request pursuant to that policy, which none of the directors really responded to. So I put more motions back on the March calendar. And then I was told that Leif was preparing a motion to have me removed as a director. And knowing my only way to compel compliance was to get the lawsuit on file, I filed it a couple of days before they filed the motion to remove me. And here we are.
Okay, that didn't really make a lot of sense.
Sorry.
What you just said. Like,
I want records. They don't want to let me see them. They removed me as a director because I filed a lawsuit to compel them to give me the records.
all right, so Alex, like, does that like you're the one vote, the 6-1, you're the one, right?
I am.
What are the other area directors thinking that, and you think differently, but what are they thinking?
One of the things I won't put. I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but my inference has been there's some crossroads between the way that John has chosen to interact with them that doesn't rub them right. The kind of prehistory before he came on the board may have left a sentiment that kind of where we are today was inevitable to them, and that he's after something. I don't know what. I can't tell you what that something is, but that he's looking for something. And I would implore everyone to ask their directors that question, because again, I want to be clear that I'm not speaking for them, but that's what my inference is of how we've gotten here.
All right, so wait, we talked about some rough communications. Now, like, let's be fair, John. You're pretty rough with your personal communications with people.
Sure.
I mean, like being fair. You get a little rough with people. Do you think that plays a part in what's happened?
Absolutely.
So can you like talk about that a little more, just so people like understand where like we're like you're talking about this pretty benign stuff with like, oh, you want to look at these records, and it's like, why the fuck do they want to kick you off the board over looking at? I mean, nobody's sitting here. Does anybody sitting here? I should ask. Does anybody sitting here think that there's going to be like some smoking gun record of impropriety or malfeasance that is to be unearthed in these records?
Not at all.
I've asked that question multiple times, like in the trying to war game, is it worth taking it this far? And every time the answer I get is no, there is not. I'm just like, then why the fuck do we want to go all the way like this?
Well, I mean, that is the question, right?
That is the question.
It was like, how did it get to this point?
Yeah.
Part of the problem is the law is incredibly simple on this topic. If you can read it and understand it and not misconstrue it, and I don't think it's being read, understood, or construed correctly by the majority. I think everybody else on the outside with an objective perspective looking at it and reading the memo from our own attorney understands it's a very clear and simple issue, and they just won't comply with it. Is that because they hate me because I'm mean to them? Maybe. Are they emotionally blinded by that? I don't know. But if you would just do what you're supposed to do, you would never hear from me again. I'm just trying to do my job and look at some records, and the guy that plows the snow is telling me no because you're mean.
But was that the answer? Is no because you're mean?
There was no direct answer from any of them except one who, yes, that was his answer, because you're mean, and because I think you should do it a different way because that's what ChatGPT tells me the law says.
What do you mean?
Well, Ben Berry has very publicly stated that his opinion on the law is that I have to state a particular request for a particular type of document limited to a particular period of time. That is his belief. He has repeated over and over again. And it is just an absolutely false and incorrect statement of the law.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the law is, but one thing that I think irks people, or like that people saw, was when you can post a screen cap of a folder that says whatever, contracts or something, and you're like, hey, I want to look at this. And then the answer is no, you can't look at that. Well, a lot of people don't like the way that sounds. Like, without knowing anything else, they'd be like, well, I don't like that.
Yeah, at least, I mean, it's impossible to think that doesn't leave open the possibility that people are going to infer the worst from that. Like, if it's reported back, as it was, that, I'm being denied access. Like, you're just opening that scenario tree, which has occurred, that people are going to think the worst, that is where whatever historical thing you think exists, that's where it is.
Yeah. Okay, so John, you could tell us about this suit. So you filed a suit in Washington. Can you explain like why that? Because there was some confusion that like USPSA is a Delaware corp, but you're in Washington, but the law in Delaware is kind of like, wouldn't it be easy with Delaware law for you just to get access to the records?
If the only issue were access to specific records, yes.
Yes. I mean, limited to records, and then it's an expedited filing is what I've heard. Boom, then they can let you look at records.
Well, it's not expedited. It's not easy. It certainly is one way this could have been handled. There are lots of ways this could have been handled.
Okay. So why did you go the route you did? I mean, because from the outsiders, people are like, well, you're suing USPSA. Like, why?
I'm suing USPSA to, there's a couple different things. The premise of the lawsuit is that you are not complying with the law. And if you're not going to comply with the law, you shouldn't exist. So do you want to comply with the law, or do you want to not exist? they were given countless choices to comply with the law. Yesterday, they were presented with the option, hey, why don't you just have this new Delaware firm you've hired draft policies on record access for directors, keeping corporate minutes, and while you're at it, confidentiality, since everybody complains about that. You have this lawyer draft those 3 documents and I will dismiss the lawsuit.
Okay.
They chose not to do that.
Well, like, what are they saying? Like, what are they
Yeah.
saying through all this?
The only person that has communicated with me ever really, besides Alex, is Ben Berry. And Ben Berry just sends long, emotional, complaining letters. I was given a copy of a conversation he had with another member about the legal issues, where he lays out his legal theory of what the law requires of my records request. And I actually took that and I sent it to him and I said, hey, Ben, if this is your belief, send it to the Delaware lawyer. If the Delaware lawyer agrees with you, I'll give $1,000 to your favorite charity tomorrow.
Okay. So like, you've never really had contact with any of them except for Ben?
None of them have ever, even before I took office, I reached out to Jim, sent him a text, sent him a message, said, hey, let's talk about how we can work together and do good things. And Jim has never responded to me or called me or reached out in any way. Early on, I had a couple of conversations with Leif when we were talking about the bylaws. And I think that's it. I had dinner with Andy during the retreat. It was lovely, but we didn't talk business. I gave Ben a ride from the airport, but we didn't talk business. And that's the extent. We don't communicate or collaborate as a professional group of directors normally does. Or they don't communicate with me. Maybe amongst themselves, the 6 they do.
Yeah. I don't know. Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
I've commented, I think, from very early being a member to this organization as a director, that communication is absolutely not what it should, both from a tempo, a regularity of having conversations that are not just an email, like being able to just pick up the phone and talk to each other. There isn't a platform for this. Like, there aren't tools for that internal to the org. So my contention was that the org is kind of setting us up for failure. This was before any indication that we were going to get here, but here we are. And so I place a lot of blame. On the lack of communication. The lack of what I call a desire to engage with someone that, again, like we opened with, John can be difficult to have a conversation with if you don't try to get through like this perception of what his style is, which, and I make the analogy to work. Like, I've had to work with people who don't report to me, obviously, because we're a massive company, that I don't necessarily like the best, but the goal is to fucking deliver, right? You have to deliver, and that means you have to figure out how to work with the person on the other side. And I haven't seen that.
And speaking for myself, it's something I think Alex and I have done since day one, is collaborated on motions, on ideas, on feedback back and forth, on strategies, trying to present things to move the organization forward in the best way we can. We've been able to do it without any sort of strife, I think.
Well, I don't know. From the outside perspective, it's like John got elected, okay, and very heated rhetoric, no doubt about it. And of course, early on, like, I know there was a couple interactions like with Ben Berry, like right away, you're like telling him to resign. I don't think you really meant it, but it was like just heated type of stuff. And I think that it's like, it never, you know what I mean? Like it's like,
it was long before then.
But like, regardless of the fact, it's that like, again, coming back to the work analogy, he was elected, right? Like, it's not my choice to decide to not work with him. His members elected him, and I have to figure out how best to do that until such point they decide that the time's no longer right and they don't want to have him anymore, right? Like it's my responsibility to learn how to work with the other directors.
Right. And then the other thing is like what the public wants. The public doesn't trust the organization very much for obvious reasons. So when the story is, hey, this director can't get records that he wants to see, it's I don't know. It's like people really don't like that, right? Because they're not trusting the organization as it is. So they're just like, well, what's going on? Like they don't really care if John's an asshole. They just want they want the records to be looked at, or they want to know that everything's okay or
And
whatever.
in fairness, had we just done what a professional board does and acted as a corporation is supposed to act, none of these issues ever would have occurred. The strife would not have existed. All I wanted to do was do the due diligence and look at a file labeled contracts to figure out what was going on so I could do my homework, and I couldn't get into anything. And it was banging my head against the wall to even get a response out of the managing director at all. I mean, it's so completely Mickey Mouse Club unprofessional actions. Yeah, I got frustrated. Yeah, I got pissed. We still have Troy as an employee, and they take the position, well, nobody ever really complained about him, so we can't really take any action against him right now until, yeah. He never really had a chance to do better. Nobody told him he wasn't doing a good job.
And the other problem is we're not really hearing anything. I mean, look at it again, if you're a random member, like what communication has there been from the organization? Like they held a special meeting and punted an area director and removed his membership. Why? Like, what is the communication on that? Has there been anything? It's not a rhetorical question. I'm really asking. Like, have they said
there were a
anything?
long list of reasons. I was mean to people and I threatened people.
I mean, reasons they gave you or reasons that they're giving to the public?
No, in the announcement, there's a whole list of
I think there was an announcement on the site.
Oh, I have to go to the site for the announcements. This is cool. Let's see this.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard that might be happening, so I'm not surprised it did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Sorry. So where does this thing stand now?
It's done. There's a lawsuit that'll work its way through the courts. There's a special election to replace me, and we'll see what they do next week with the bylaws and the regional director and all the other things that there's a lot of work to be done that hasn't been done.
All right. So, okay, fiduciary duty violations. So threatened USPSA employees' jobs, filing a litigation in the state of Washington to dissolve the USPSA, discussing confidential employment matters in open board meeting, publicly and baselessly accusing the managed director of dishonesty, threatening and harassing Delaware. What's this all about? Threatening and harassing Delaware counsel with baseless claims.
Real quick, before y'all get into those violations that you're reading off, that third bullet point is the part that I don't necessarily understand directly above. Above the sentence, the board weighed the following facts. The members of Area 2 have the opportunity to vote.
Yeah, there were a couple of weird statements in that document about that didn't quite make sense.
In compliance with Delaware law to remove Mr. Burt. No, people don't get to vote, right? It's already done.
Right, it's done.
That's weird.
Yeah, there's another statement in there that doesn't make any sense about that there will now be a recall vote by the members, and that's not it. I don't think that's happening.
No, they've already removed your membership.
Right.
Using derogatory language towards members with differing opinions on social media. What'd you say to Tim Herron?
That he was a stupid troll.
I mean, okay. Responded to members' inquiries and criticism with profane and hostile communications. Did you do that one?
I don't think so. Just the Tim Herron email.
Employing similar unprofessional language in internal communications and with legal counsel. Misrepresenting bylaw review status by falsely claiming committee and attorney approval. Oh, what's that all about?
That was a pretty deep reach. I think that I do recall a discussion. It might have even been a live meeting where I said it's already been through our attorney, and then Ben's like, "It hasn't been approved." And I said, "I didn't say approved. I said it was reviewed," and he did approve the
Is
draft.
that getting the bylaws approved by a Delaware attorney?
That's a different sort of issue. We had a corporate counsel and we asked him, do we need a Delaware attorney to review this? And he said, no, I'm qualified to review it under Delaware law. And he actually reviewed the draft bylaws twice for legality and for form and said, here you go. And then last week, we actually interviewed a Delaware lawyer and said, do we need to have specifically a Delaware lawyer review these again? And he said, no, there's only 3 particular issues and anybody would know to look out for those. And otherwise, any competent corporate attorney could review the bylaws for you, which we had done. There's a lot of reaching in there. The derogatory language to the Delaware attorney was before I was seated as a director. And the guy was just a pompous piece of shit, and I told him to go fuck himself.
All right. It says our managing director continues to provide exceptional leadership in daily operations despite having been under constant attack by Mr. Burt. What does that mean?
Hey, Alan, would you do your job? Hey, Alan, could you do your job? That's it. There were no attacks. In January, we had the discussion that was somewhat heated in the open meeting. And when I asked him why he lied about the records, he said, because the board told me to. I mean, that's there. It's recorded for everybody to see, but that was apparently me attacking him with baseless allegations.
I would be so curious. I want to hear what these guys, what the 6, yes, but I'd want to talk to them. I'm so curious. John, where does this thing sit now? So where does it sit for you personally? Like, what are you going to do?
I mean, I was elected. I made it clear I was retired after 25 years as a civil trial lawyer, that these were the things I do, and that, the main focus was bringing transparency and member rights. And so I filed a lawsuit and I'm going to stick to it. I also said last week, hey, why don't we put this to a member vote? If the members want to recall me, if you get 55% that say they don't like what I'm doing, I'll resign and dismiss the lawsuit tomorrow. But this should be a member choice, and we should ask the members. They didn't want to do that either. But this is what I think a very large majority of Area 2 elected me to do, and I'm going to keep going. And the response and the feedback I've had so far has been overwhelmingly, please continue, don't let up. We should have done this after Scott, and we're glad you're doing it.
Alex, do you have any thoughts on, so anyway, John, just to clarify, you plan to, so the lawsuit will continue?
The lawsuit will continue, but I also would like this organization to be professional, strong, and grow. And even today, I have stated, if they reverse this order and have the lawyer draft the 3 policies, I will dismiss immediately.
Okay.
I don't get money out of this. I'm spending my own money to do it. In the end of the day, I don't get a paycheck out of this. The money and the assets go to the state of Washington. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to do the right thing and to bring transparency to the organization.
Okay. Alex, what do you think? Like, where do you see this thing headed?
It comes back to like the wargaming question, like now and where we are today. The 3 policies that John had proposed, I again circled among the other directors. And whilst I had multiple people respond saying, yes, this makes sense, we should do this, there seems to be an overwhelming belief that even if we do, that John will not do as he say, that lawsuit will continue, and that, again, my perception is that there's just going to be, or they think maybe that there's going to be something else, the next thing. You know, so like this never-ending. Think of it as like this never-ending cycle of brinksmanship. I think is like just now where we're at. Is kind of how I read the room. But what I would hope would have happened by now is that we would have engaged in conversation, have brought counsel in to mediate this, because there has been offers for mediation from John, that we would have had at least engaged in doing that before taking it to the point where we are today and what happened today. Yeah, it's all fucking frustrating, if I'm being honest. It's really frustrating.
Well, I mean, I think again, as outsiders, like the members they're getting one side of this story, which I mean, we're just like, what the fuck what is this? Like, what is going on here? And it doesn't look real good. And
no, but it's made me think about other things, man. Like, and I posted in this one Discord earlier, and it's like, I think since Saturday, it's just occurred to me, like, how do we prevent this from happening? Like, if the fear is that John would just continue, like that the warpath would just continue, and there would be a next thing, then they also must believe that, because I believe, like, when my tenure's done, I'm not gonna run again. I'm not doing this shit again. Who knows? I'll make it to the end. Who's to say that the person that replaces me isn't another? I'm just gonna use, in quotes, another John. And what prevents that? And so, like, then the question occurs: what's the root issue here? How do we continue to be in these wacky cycles of just the board behaving and doing things in ways that a professional organization just probably wouldn't? And it's the elections, how people are elected, the criteria by which candidacies are evaluated. Like, that whole cycle is something now that I'm just keen to think about, because it seems necessary and requisite that it changes. Like, the popularity contests that have got us here are the core fundamental issue, like, before the organization, if it really wants to transform and evolve and like grow into whatever that next phase is, I mean, that has to be solved, I think.
And member feedback and member recall. The members of Area 2 elected me to do something. They should have the choice. If they don't want me to do it, recall me. Like I said, I volunteered. I said the recall in the draft bylaws was a 70% vote. I said, if you do that and get 55%, I'll walk away.
all right. I don't think this is the last we'll be talking about this. Hey, John, do you have anything else you want to say?
No.
Branch
remains extended. I would love to get in and just do my job and fix this. And I think any professional approach on the other side to have a conversation, look, you and I have had a lot of conversations and disagreements in the past. Alex and I have worked through a lot of things. I've worked through a lot of things with a lot of people in the course of my life. Do I have trouble communicating with Ben Berry? Absolutely. Could I do better? Yes. Could he do better? Yes. Would we all be better if the other 6 had some modicum of professional business or legal experience? 100%. I think everybody on the outside looking at this, just like you are, is shaking their head going, I don't understand. Why can't a director open a folder that says contracts? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, that is not a good look at all. When it's like, oh, you have to just say, God damn it. This is not what I wanted to be arguing about in 2025. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I'll put this up on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.